Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's event on the importance and the potential of offshore wind in the Baltic Sea. It's great to see so many of you here. It's really a full house. I guess we are all back from the holidays and we are really eager and excited to discuss such an important legislative period ahead of us. This event is organized by PGE in a media partnership with Euractiv and being hosted at the premises of Poland's permanent representation to the EU, which we are very thankful that they are hosting us with the very characteristic Polish hospitality. My name is Anna Gumbau. I'm a journalist and an event moderator with Euractiv, and I will be delighted to be moderating today's exciting discussion. I'll keep my presentation short because we have a very packed program ahead of us. But as we know, the Baltic Sea region has an incredible offshore wind capacity with estimates showing a potential close to 100 gigawatts by 2050. However, there's a lot of questions arising when it comes to the challenges, the legislative context and regulatory frameworks that we need for that, and the incentives that will unlock all the necessary investment and potential here. So. Yeah, this event is going to be live streamed also, so welcome to those of you joining us online. We're going to start with some welcoming words from Poland's Deputy Permanent Representative to the EU. Then we're going to have a keynote speech from Acting Director Łukasz Koliński of the European Commission. And then we'll have a panel discussion where we will also want to hear from you and get your questions. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the Deputy Permanent Representative of Poland to the EU, Mr. Arkadiusz Pruczyński. Welcome.
Many thanks for this short introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, dear colleagues, first of all, good afternoon. And thanks for coming to the Polish Permanent Representation. It's good to see so many friendly faces, not only from my colleagues from the Council, but also from the Commission and also other representatives of other stakeholders from this very important business community. It is a great pleasure to once again host a discussion about the potential of wind energy in the Baltic Sea region, of course in partnership with PGE. And the context for today's meeting is also a very particular one. As you know, yesterday we and I'm sure some of you had even read the report of Mr. Draghi. So we all received this report, and we are ready to read those 400 pages and also see what will be the follow-up for the days, weeks, and months to come. On the other side, if not tomorrow, then very soon we will also know who will get the mandate to lead the energy portfolio in the new Commission. So this is all very interesting context. The Polish government strongly believes that offshore generation is instrumental to achieve the objective of energy independence, not only in Poland, but also in the entire European Union. Of course, we remember about geopolitical context of this discussion. Energy security remains a key priority, and we want to guarantee an access to safe, sustainable and affordable energy. Further support of the offshore technologies requires providing solutions such as regulatory framework, human resource training, or permitting. Polish ambition foresees around 6 gigawatts in 2030 and even 18 gigawatts in 2040 of installed capacity of offshore wind energy in our economic zone. The development of offshore generation will play a crucial role in the energy transition and would put an emphasis on the competitiveness and economic growth in the whole Baltic region. Furthermore, offshore is considered, as you know, socially acceptable solution, and I believe that Polish producers and companies whose representatives are also present today will be part of this process. In this spirit, I would like to wish you all a fruitful discussion, and let me now give the floor to Łukasz Koliński, Acting Director of the Green Transition and Energy System Integration in the DG ENER. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I must tell you I'm delighted to see the crowd that we have here. I think we can say it's a crowd willing to discuss the offshore energy in the Baltic Sea region at this very juncture. I mean, it is really a crucial moment, I believe, that we are here, and I think there are indeed quite a number of topics, as mentioned by the ambassador, that need to be still tackled. In the Commission's opinion, it's very, very clear the Baltic Sea region will be key for moving on with the energy transition in a way which will foster collaboration, enhance security of supply, and will help make energy prices affordable. This is obviously not only our hope as the Commission. This has already been said very, very clearly in the Marienborg Declaration by the countries of the region. So there is a commitment there. As Anna already mentioned, there is a huge potential in the region, more than 90 gigawatts of offshore renewables. We expect that the Baltic Sea basin will become EU's second largest producer of offshore wind energy. We welcome the goals that have been put forward by those who signed the declaration for the development of the projects, more than 22 gigawatts in 2030 and then rising to 45 gigawatts in 2050. Just for you to understand the context, we have around 20 gigawatts of offshore energy across the whole EU today. So we are talking about the figures higher than everything that we have today. We are very heartened by the progress that has been made since the signature of the declaration. We see projects coming off the ground, including hybrid projects of common interest, such as Bornholm Energy Island or the Elwind project between Estonia and Latvia. We also see increasing offshore wind investments in new manufacturing facilities being built in the region. Yet, clearly, the pace needs to speed up, and this means overcoming challenges from supply chain availability, lack of human resources and skills, to still too lengthy permitting procedures. We in the Commission, we realize the challenge, and at the same time, I want to say that we've come a very long way in the last mandate of the Commission to make the EU regulatory framework very supportive to offshore wind. This included the revision of the 10E regulation, this included the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive or the electricity market reform. Long hours in the legislative negotiations, but all these elements are now in force and they need to be implemented so that their benefits can be reaped. On the manufacturing side, let's not forget the Net Zero Industry Act. It was already mentioned that offshore energy has this potential, this social potential, this economic potential related to the manufacturing of all this equipment. We also worked with the member states and the industry to support wind energy through non-legislative initiatives such as Wind Power Action Plan or wind charter signed by almost all member states and many, many companies from the sector. We produced communication on achieving the EU's offshore wind ambitions, which also outlined the steps we want to take in this direction. I'm glad to say that most of the actions which were there in the Wind Power Action Plan have already been delivered. This includes recommendations on permitting, auctions design, the EU-wide renewables auction platform to further enhance visibility of projects pipeline, but not only. The important thing, the European Investment Bank provided already €5 billion counter-guarantee scheme for wind energy manufacturing projects. And also on the manufacturing side, we have now ongoing preliminary reviews under the foreign subsidies regulation regarding certain wind projects in several European member states, which have been launched in order to verify whether competition in the sector, in the wind sector, is fair. We are happy with the competition, but it needs to be fair. What do we focus on now in the Commission? We know that grid connections and issues related to grids in general remain a bottleneck for further deployment of renewable energy and in particular wind. So we pursue vigorously the implementation of the Grids Action Plan. We are following up on the guidance on collaborative investment frameworks for offshore energy projects in a way tailored to the needs of each region. That includes obviously the Baltic Sea region, and we will continue to engage with all the member states, all the relevant member states on this issue. We are drafting the Implementing Act on non-price criteria in auctions mandated by Net Zero Industry Act, in order to foster the sustainability, cybersecurity and resilience of the European supply chain for renewable energy technologies, including wind. I could mention other initiatives we're working on, but I would like to also mention that we continue to provide incentives, financial incentives for investments in renewables. We push on with calls for proposals under the Connecting Europe facility, also the renewable energy financing mechanism, which currently, in the current call, focuses on solar PV in Finland and onshore wind projects in Estonia, thanks to financial contribution from Luxembourg. It could also facilitate offshore wind generation investments. We also, and it was mentioned, we need more skills in order to develop and deploy all these projects, and therefore we continue to support the work of the Renewable Energy Skills Partnership. We value a lot the work in this regional setup in the high-level groups which foster regional cooperation. The Baltic Sea has its own high-level group, the Baltic Energy Market Interconnection Plan, BEMIP high-level group, and we committed, and we will deliver on it, to provide further impetus to the work of this group so that it gives a stronger steer on offshore projects development. So there is no doubt about Commission's strong commitment to further development and deployment of offshore energy in the Baltic Sea region and other sea basins around the EU. Although the new Commission is not in place yet, I can say that our President von der Leyen, already committed to scale up and prioritize investment in clean energy infrastructure and technologies, including renewables, including low carbon technologies, as well as grid infrastructure. And obviously we will all find out more about the details of the next Monday through the mission letters to the new commissioners, but the direction is already very, very clear. And this is already very good news, I believe, for offshore wind, for European offshore wind, and for offshore wind development in the Baltic Sea region. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much to Acting Director Łukasz Koliński, and also to Mr. Ambassador Pluczynski for their opening words. I think it paints, a very accurate picture of the state of play of the development and also challenges in the development of wind in the wind energy in the Baltic Sea region. And also, I think there's something important here, which is that when it comes to the next legislative term, I think majority of us have more questions than answers. But as Mr. Kolinski mentioned, the direction, sense of direction for the next European Commission is clear. So thank you very much for being with us today. Now let's get the panel discussion started, because we have, I think, what's a stellar speaker lineup with us to discuss a bit these questions in more detail. So I would like to introduce each one of them one by one. So join me in a big round of applause for them. I would like to start by welcoming the Deputy Permanent Representative of Lithuania to the EU, Ms. Jurga Kasputienė. Welcome. Right here. Thank you so much for joining. Next up with us is the Chief Operating Officer of PGE, Mr. Maciej Górski. Welcome. Thank you so much. Next up with us, we have the CEO at Wind Europe, Mr. Giles Dixon. Welcome. Otherwise, fine. And last but definitely not the least, the Vice Chair of the Board at ENSO-E, Mr. Tahir Kapetanovic. Welcome. As you can see, we have a lot to discuss. We have a really full room here at the Polish Permanent Representation, but we also have many of you joining us online. We'll try to take as many questions as possible, both from the floor and from the online audience. Those of you joining us online, you will see that we have a Slido set up for you to send your questions. It's at slido.com using the hashtag Baltic Energy. Baltic Energy. So let's get this panel discussion started, and I would like to start with you, Ms. Ambassador Kasputienė. We've heard from the perspective of Polish Ambassador Pluczynski on how critical the development of offshore wind in the Baltic Sea region is, and I would like to hear from you as well. Which potential do you think it has in supporting Europe in achieving its own climate and energy goals? What can you tell us about that?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me in this event. It's a bit of déjà vu, because exactly 2 years ago we have a very similar event and discussing the same issues, and now we have an opportunity really to see the progress where we do stand now. And of course it is obvious that we are in the midst of this transformation, this challenge that we face to fully transition to climate neutral energy sources. And of course, if we are to replace currently used fossil fuels, electricity will become the main source of energy, and our energy production, transmission, and consumption models will have to fundamentally change. And I, of course, want to speak from our Lithuanian perspective. For us, this transition is, how to say, have a double importance, double meaning. It's not just the implementation of our climate commitments to decarbonize our economy, but it's also to ensure our energy security that leads to our economic security. And we see that it's an opportunity to completely abandon imported fossil fuels and produce all the necessary energy ourselves and become fully energy independent. Moreover, by leveraging our geographical advantage, the potential that renewable generation has in our region, we can become an energy exporter in the future. And in this process, the offshore wind has an important role to play. As recently as the summit, our parliament, Seimas, has adopted the new national energy independence strategy that provides the path on how Lithuania will achieve these goals. The strategy sets ambitious objectives for the future to become energy self-sufficient by 2050, ensuring decarbonization of all energy sectors. And to achieve these strategic objectives, electricity generation will be the key. Over the coming decades, we expect a 5- to 8-fold increase in installed capacity, with the largest shares being offshore and onshore wind and solar. These developments will enable us to increase our electricity generation 6 times, with wind energy becoming the major contributor to domestic generation and generating around 63% of total annual electricity output. And by 2050, Lithuania expects to have installed capacity of onshore wind power that would reach 10 gigawatts, and offshore wind power 4.5 gigawatts, and solar power 9 gigawatts. Of course, all these changes will not happen without speedy development of necessary infrastructure. And for now, we have very real plans in the pipeline to develop 2 offshore wind parks of 700 megawatt each. First offshore wind tender was successful. It was launched in 2023 as subsidy-free tender, and participants had to propose so-called development fee payable to the state. And this tender was successful and won by Ignitis Renewables and Ocean Winds Offshore. The capacity of 700 megawatts was tendered, and it is expected that the implemented project will generate around 2.5 up to 3 terawatts of electricity annually. We believe that this output could potentially meet up to a quarter of today's Lithuania's electricity demand, but of course we all expect that demand will increase with the decarbonization process. Now we are preparing the second tender. We struggled a little with this, but now we are working on improving the tender conditions for participants, making them more favorable, for example, by indexing annually CFDs in accordance with annual inflation, and this indexation will be applied for 15 years for support period. And we hope that to launch this tender this autumn by the end of the year. Of course, we are not the only country in the region who is developing offshore wind and general transformation in general. We believe that in Europe we see that there are regions with different capacities, and as the Commission representative mentioned that the Baltic Sea has a huge potential for renewable generation, and so our aim is to but other regions would have demand for this renewable energy, so our ambition is to become exporting country and to supply the renewable energy to the other regions. And we believe that with our plans we can achieve this already in very quickly by 2030-35. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, for also painting the picture on the potential in Lithuania specifically. Something that we discussed a bit before going on stage is how the quest for energy independence of Lithuania is also tightly linked to a security question, which we will also draw into it later on. Now I would like to hear from Maciej Górski, from CEO at PGE. We were mentioning before the Marienborg Declaration. It's been 2 years since it was signed, and I wanted to pick up on some of the questions that have come up in the speeches, which is to which extent has it actually made a difference? How has the development of offshore wind projects progressed since then? Has the commitment been translated to actual progress? What do you think?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for that question and for bringing a broader perspective for the development of offshore wind in the Baltic Sea. Everybody has his or her déjà vu. Me, myself, I have a déjà vu because I am back with PGE Group after 8 years. And already 8 years ago, I was working on the development of the first 3 offshore projects within the PGE Group, and I'm really glad to see that those projects have progressed, and definitely the declarations that you have just mentioned are very instrumental for better understanding of how much of an impact can the offshore wind make on not only the Polish economy and the Polish energy mix, but also on the economies of all the countries around the Baltic Sea. We, as PGE Group, we are progressing very well with our first projects, the projects that have been awarded contracts for difference and for which we have selected a partner from the Baltic Sea region. Because as you may know, PGE is developing the first two most advanced projects together with Ørsted. And I think that on one hand side, it is important to mention that a offshore wind is a relatively new technology for us as PGE Group and for all Polish utilities who have been awarded the concessions. And in my opinion, the partnership that we have established with a reputable investor from the offshore wind sector is instrumental for the development of our first projects. So that is my reflection that whenever we speak about joint efforts and joint declarations that we may want to achieve for the regions within the European Union, it is good to emphasize that there is a great value in the partnerships that companies from the member states and from other European countries may bring a great value to how effectively projects are being developed. So as we speak, we are in the final stage of the development of our first project, which will be a great milestone. We are strongly committed to take the final investment decision in Q4, and which will translate into the commencement of the construction phase. And we truly hope that in the second quarter of 2027, which in the offshore wind business is just around the corner, we will be delivering the first electricity to the grid from our first project. And just the last comment that I wanted to make as a kind of opening comment for in response to the question regarding the Marienborg Declaration, it is important to understand that 93 gigawatts in the course of the several years, it is a large number, it is an ambitious target, and it is very important not to think about this target in the last year of that period, but it is very important to think about that as a process. We need to make sure that all market participants from all countries think about the development of their portfolios, of their projects, in the context of a sequence of events that needs to take place in order for each project to get completed. But in the same time, it is very important for those new kids on the block, just like ourselves, to be able to be active participants of the supply chains, which are very demanding. And we, as PGE, we are in a very open, constructive dialogue with the decision makers in Poland, who will set the tone for the next year auction, so that they understand that this is not only about us being able to get projects completed, but it's also about the whole industry to be able to develop steadily towards that very ambitious target. And the fact that we are here and now in 2024, in my opinion, will allow us to take that very constructive and structured approach to how this industry will develop and how the volume will be growing steadily towards the target that has been set.
Thank you very much, Mr. Górski. I could pick up a few points already from here, from the question of indeed that this is a process taking place steadily. The fact that there is commitment, the fact that we're already seeing some progress, but that there's like the obstacles we've mentioned. And now I would like to bring the same or a very similar question to Giles Dixon. I mean, I think in the past couple of years we've been seeing a lot of commitment from governments. We've been seeing a lot of different pieces of legislation, different communications, different pieces of the puzzle that are meant to help us to achieve these targets. How do you think that then is this commitment really translating into action and really supporting the Baltic Sea region and Europe as a whole in achieving these objectives?
Yes, it is, Anna. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Baltic Sea has 3.3 gigawatts of offshore wind in operation today. Wind Europe judge, and we will publish some data on this on Thursday, that by 2030, and this is a very hard-headed, realistic assessment, the Baltic Sea will have 13 gigawatts of offshore wind in operation. That includes over 5.5 gigawatts in Poland and your first project, Ambassador, as well. And that is thanks to the ambition that governments have articulated, notably at Marienborg and elsewhere. And it's thanks to the real efforts that governments have been making on the back of that ambition. And hats off to the governments of Poland and Lithuania for the real action that you have taken to translate ambition. It's easy to have ambition, but to translate it into wind turbines in the sea is very challenging. But Poland and Lithuania are in fact giving a very good example to every other country around the Baltic Sea, to the 6 other countries, of how to do it. You're both using two-sided CFD auctions. That is the recommended model by the European Commission. It's the model strongly endorsed yesterday by Mario Draghi. You started off with a slightly different model, Ambassador, and now you've changed to CFDs. Well done. And in Poland, you started off negotiating the CFDs with the developers, and now next year, Poland will run its first CFD auction. This is very encouraging indeed. The other thing that you're doing, especially in Poland, is to support the expansion of the offshore wind energy supply chain. For many years, Poland has been manufacturing foundations for offshore wind turbines, since well before the Polish government decided it wanted to have your own offshore wind farms, in fact. Now you're building factories for other components. Vestas are building 2 factories in Szczecin, one to make blades for offshore wind turbines, the other to make nacelles and hubs for turbines. A company called Baltic Towers is building a tower factory in Gdańsk, investing over 200 million euros in that. And all of these investments come with the support of public authorities in Poland and public financial institutions. And well done. Again, setting a really good example to other countries around the Baltic Sea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. I think it's really interesting indeed to tackle the supply chain perspective, which I think we'll try to get into a bit more detail if time allows. Also the question of competitiveness. There's no event, I think, in early September which won't be discussing the track reports, definitely. So I'll pick up on that later. But before that, I'd like to hear from the Vice Chair of the Board at ENTSO-E, Tahir Kapitanovic. From a grid and transmission system perspective, what do you see then? What's your assessment of the primary challenges then of integrating offshore wind in the Baltic region's energy networks, and how have offshore network development plans put forward by ENTSO-E been supporting that?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you on behalf of ENTSO-E for having us here. And I'd like to start with the challenge we already resolved, the TSOs. maybe not yet, but in the first half of next year. And most of you know for sure there was a project running since 2017, and it's about connectivity. Not connectivity of wind power, but even more important, connectivity and synchronous operations of the three transmission system operators, transmission grids of the three Baltic countries with the rest of the continental Europe. This being said, forgive me, I'm an engineer, a little bit for non-technicians, it's not very detailed. We are going to have this operation in a quite a unique way with balancing the three systems, where the frequency, the heartbeat, will be 50 Hertz with continental Europe, but Finnish system operator, Fingrid, will be helping via DC cable to balance the system. Yeah? This is a solution for connectivity which is more important than the wind, so that systems are connected. And when this is done, next year, all the wind coming to the Baltic states, coming from Baltic Basin, will be visible in the whole of Europe with the same heartbeat of 50 Hertz. But let's be serious. Now, the challenges really about wind power integration are same almost everywhere, with this additional one we resolved here. It's about connectivity, it's about storage, and it's about coordination. What I'm saying here, I invite you, those of you who might not know it, but I think you all know it, NSOE has just in January this year published our first offshore network development plan. This is kind of a structure of document. There is a one umbrella paper with 7 regional ones. One of them is the Baltic Basin. It's about 48 pages, where we have produced a vision. It's not really a list of projects. It's still not that far. But this is the analysis of potential, as already said, how much will be possible 2030, 2040, and 2050. What are the key challenges, the country analysis, the non-binding member states' commitments, which the member states were due to deliver according to the legislation last year. And out of this, I would say a few words about each of these 3 major challenges. Connectivity. Of course, it's about bringing the wind power to the lands where it will be used, not just produced, but also used wherever it is, whether it is for the customers, with its electrolyzers or anything else. And here we will see also in this region, in the first 10 to 15 years, mainly radial connection, which is fine and nice. But this is maybe not that good for the second challenge, which is about storage. We have 2 first installations, which also transmission system operators of the involved countries have produced already. And this is so-called hybrid topology. This means you connect 1 or 2 or more countries via the offshore installation of wind. Why is it good? Because considering, for example, size of the Baltic countries, or even maybe this place to mention the synchronization was the most appropriate one, because my fellow colleague from Polish system operator, Miguel Wazirvoda, would have joined us today, but he's chairing the meeting in Tallinn about the synchronization. Yeah? So Poland, Germany, they are big countries in this region, yeah? But they are smaller ones. So you will not be able to swallow, to use all this wind power. Yeah? So the question is how and where to store it. And this is where this hybrid way of the topology, hybrid grid design will be important in the next 15 years plus. Well, the second one is, I said already, storage. We are blessed in this region. I come from Austria, where I work for Austrian TSO. My function in NSOE is election one. And we are lucky with pump storage. There is a lot of storage generation in Sweden, in Norway, and so on here, close to this region. So this is the challenge which, the grid will enable to resolve, where to put a surplus, or where to get it out if you don't have enough. But of course, it will not be only hydro pump storage. It will be all other kinds of solutions, as I mentioned, the electrolyzers and so on. Where again, you will need the grid. You will need this connectivity. Whenever I'm speaking about transmission, about grids and so on, I like to say, be careful, and we cannot build a railway station without the tracks. So really, it's a challenge of building these tracks. And finally, the last one is the coordination. It's the coordination in investment, in developing the grid, our 10Y network development plan, 10 years network development plan, but also coordination of operation, which with this synchronization, the 3 Baltic countries will also join our coordination centers and a regional approach of the continental Europe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapetanovic. So connectivity, storage, and coordination as these 3 challenges, priorities, however you want to call it, really, that can support and unlock the potential in the region and also across of Europe. Now I'd like to we'll have a little debate with my follow-up questions, but then we will shortly also move into the Q&A with the audience. And I would like to pick up on one of the big challenges then that this implies, which is that because of the increasing importance of offshore wind installations, there's of course some security and defense needs that we'll have to ensure when it comes to this critical infrastructure. So I'm curious to understand, and it also connects to a question that we got on Slido on the potential risks that we see in this front and how this can be mitigated. And I believe that in the case of Lithuania, Ms. Ambassador Kasputienė can tell us also the perspective on the security perspective on that.
Given our geographic location, of course, the security is the thing that it's very important for successive governments, and we are kind of pioneers. We started talking about energy security in 2007-2008. when there was the first instances of the manipulation from the supply side, from the Russian gas. And at that point, we were paying the highest price for the gas and 100% dependent on the Russian energy sources. Now, we don't buy any Russian molecules, neither gas nor oil. And we are talking about the energy independence with the new strategy that we have. I don't believe that the offshore wind have more or less security risks than other critical energy installations. And we are taking also think that we are a bit, how to say, do it first and then EU follows. Of course, we started, I think, one of the first countries that we have national system for the investment screening in the economic sectors that are of critical importance for national security. And now we have the EU-wide screening process as well. We are working on the ensuring that critical elements of the grid management and energy installation management, like software or automatic systems or cloud operations are supplied from the reliable partners, making sure that there is no hostile action or sabotage could switch off your energy system. And of course, the third and also important thing is to make this physical security efforts to ensure the resilience against hostile activities that could happen also. So I think it was having all this in mind, we can really say that we can manage the risks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ambassador. Mr. Górski, from Poland's and from PGE's perspective, would you share the same concerns, and which potential risks do you see then with the development of offshore wind in the region?
I think yes. I think that this is a new perspective that we are having on the offshore wind, and definitely the 24th of February 2022 has changed our perspective on the necessary measures that needs to be undertaken in regards to different dimensions of the security that we were considering in regards to our infrastructure that very often is concerned as critical infrastructure for the national energy security. And I think that this proves my thesis that being a participant of the offshore wind industry is not only the privilege or not only the possibility to make an investment and generate certain returns, but this is also an obligation. This is the need for a responsible attitude towards the development of stable generation sources of a significant scale, because as we all know, offshore wind is very specific in that regard, that despite this, the weather-dependent energy source, the scale of the projects and the magnitude of the potential installed capacity have an impact on the energy mix of respective countries and beyond, as it has been mentioned, that some of the countries will not be able to swallow that. So, what we do as PGs before starting to investigate the possibilities of offshore wind, we have been operating conventional generation assets. We have been operating the large-scale pumped storage assets, and we were already used to the definition of the critical infrastructure, and we were used to tackling the aspects of the security of those assets. But definitely, since several months, we needed to enter into a very open and intense dialogue with the Polish Ministry of Defense, and we are definitely open to better understand the expectations and the required equipment and attitude towards those assets while they are in the operations from the both physical and cybersecurity point of view. This requires additional spendings. That's clear, both in the construction phase, but also in the operations phase. But this is why I think that being part of this. Being part of those projects means taking on a certain responsibility that for us as the largest energy player in Poland is quite a natural thing. But I do appreciate that this topic is being brought to broader attention, and that this thing is being addressed also by our colleagues and peers.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Mr. Kapitanovic and Mr. Jackson would want to add something?
About risk preparedness or risk management? Yeah. Well, if you want, again, three things, I like the number three. First, I think that we all have our risk preparedness plans and everything we are legally obliged to do. Every TSO has to do this. But in the end, it boils down to redundancy. Redundancy in the grid and redundancy also in generation facilities. We've seen ever since the synchronization of Ukraine with our Ukrainian colleagues, also how they are still, despite the really bad situation, managed to survive through with this redundancy. The second thing I'd like to mention is cybersecurity. This is probably the biggest threat today, I would say, and the cheapest one for anybody. And the one where we together with European DSO entity, this is the Association of DSOs of Europe, are working really very closely together. There has been a legislation just recently put in place, a cybersecurity network code. Ever since Ukrainian war, but also before, have been investing heavily and working very hard in cybersecurity. It is just that we do not talk about it in public. And finally, it's resilience. In the end of the day, our business, transmission system, but also distribution system operation, the whole electric power system, it's about, I would call it time to repair or time to come back. Because you can never prevent, be it technical failure, or be it like in a case of war in Ukraine, the attack of the enemy on your infrastructure. But at the same time, it's always the key for you as an operator, how fast and how well can you restore the system function back. So I think this is really the bottom line of the resilience and risk preparedness.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And Charles Dixon?
The Baltic has been the scene in the last 2 years of two major unexpected physical incidents on subsea energy infrastructure. Ambassador, your government hosted a Baltic Energy Security Summit on the 10th of April this year with the 8 governments. NATO were there at a very senior level, because NATO have just set up an operational cell on the security of offshore energy infrastructure in NATO member countries. Each NATO member country has a cell in its capital of 2 people who are looking at satellite surveillance data. Where they see anything suspicious, they are sharing it with other NATO countries through this new operational cell headquartered in London. We have had our first instance already this year of data from this operational cell, which was only set up at the end of last year, leading to to Dutch assets intercepting a Russian fishing vessel, in inverted commas, that had been loitering for a few days, stationary in a part of the Dutch seas where there is known to be subsea cables connecting offshore wind farms. And the Dutch vessel escorted the Russian fishing vessel out of their waters. It's very good that NATO have now taken this on. We have to be vigilant. On the cybersecurity, it's both cybersecurity and data security, and they're 2 quite different things. The data security is a very major risk. The European Union is now, through the instruments that Łukasz Kolinski described earlier, saying to all national governments, you must put tight criteria, pre-qualification criteria into your offshore wind auctions that require the bidders to commit to the data from those offshore wind turbines staying in Europe or staying in friendly countries. There are lots of sensors on wind turbines nowadays, and they give you not only information about the functioning of the components on which those sensors are located, they give you the ability to control the functioning of those components, and thereby to control the functioning of the wind turbines. And this poses significant risks if the data is allowed to leave the European Union and go to countries to whom, for example, under the NIS 2 cybersecurity directive, the European Commission has decided it shall not be exporting data of any kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giles Dixon. Before moving to the Q&A with the audience, there's one last topic I would want to bring up. Before that, my understanding is that there's been some cutoffs with the streaming. However, we'll still have the video of the event available afterwards. So apologies if there's been any inconvenience in this front. But I mean, of course, in the context where we are right now, and in this week in particular, as I mentioned, we cannot escape the question of investments, the question of competitiveness. And yesterday, the competitiveness report by Mario Draghi being released with I think a very sound assessment on the situation across sectors, but also for the renewable energy and wind energy industry, and some recommendations really on how to address these challenges. So I would like to maybe then stay with you, Giles Dixon. So if you could talk to us a little bit on what are your main perhaps highlights of the report. What is something that you would particularly highlight from the perspective of the wind industry? What are some important recommendations that it made? Was there anything really surprising at all? What actionable steps can we do after that?
It was very good that the Draghi report recognizes that the #1 bottleneck to the expansion of all renewable energy in Europe today is in electricity grids, that we need to accelerate the build-out of electricity grids. And these bottlenecks exist for all sorts of reasons, including some supply-side constraints in the manufacturing of the necessary grid equipment. And I'm sure, Tahir, from your perspective and SOE's wider perspective, you're only too conscious of these constraints. The transformer manufacturers are building new factories, and this is very positive, but we need more of these factories, and it's good that the Draghi report addressed this directly yesterday and said very clearly the EU needs to put in place new financial instruments that will further incentivize more such investments in the manufacturing capacity in Europe of low-carbon energy equipment. The Draghi report also reminded us that we mustn't lose sight of the need to further accelerate the permitting, both of grid investments and offshore wind farms. The EU's made a lot of good progress in this area, as Łukasz highlighted earlier. In the first half of this year, Germany has permitted 5 gigawatts of new onshore wind farms. That's fantastic. It's 4 times more than what they were permitting 4 years ago, because they are the first country in Europe to apply this very simple common sense principle that the expansion of renewables is a matter of overriding public interest. But only 5 member states have implemented that. The other 22 are meant to have done it by the 30th of June. Come on. And Draghi has said exactly the same thing in his report. This is a matter of urgency. These rules must be properly implemented and enforced.
Thank you very much. And then I would like to bring back Mr. Kapetanovic as well on the question of grids in particular, because the report makes a very sobering assessment on the needs for grid modernization. What can you tell us about that?
I won't like repeating myself, but let's not build railways without tracks. Permissions really good, but permissions for lines and also onshore and offshore. Because in NSOE you do not distinguish offshore grid, onshore grid. It's all part of 10 YDP and of one grid. But maybe to be a little bit more specific, this is really a true challenge. I give you an example. If you want to install a transformer, the lead time, pre-80 kV transformer, so the high voltage one, is between 5 and 7 years. So basically you have to order it before you have all the environmental and all other permissions. Which means, as a CEO of a company, of a TSO, ordering it, you are maybe not fully legally compliant because you don't have a permission for investment you have to do if you want to have it in time. Similar thing is with aluminium, with wires for our lines, with copper and so on. And this is really something what has been amplified after COVID. Wherever the reasons are, I do not want to comment on this. COVID was excuse for many things, but we are facing this together with our fellow DSO, distribution system operators. And this is one of the reasons why, if you are, I'm sure you're familiar with European Grid Action Plan, the action number 13, 1.3, yeah? This is the duty, this is actually assigned to TSO, NSOE and European DSO entity, the duty to work really hard on standards, on technical norms, on all aspects which are necessary for the European competitive environment to bridge this gap, to do something, to create conditions for supply chain, but supply chain resolution, problem resolution. But to be honest, we cannot do it on ourselves. We need very strong backing from legislation, regulation, and so on. So this is really an issue. And I tell you, as long as it takes 7 or 8 years to get a network element, to get a gear, to get equipment operating, and as long as it takes us to make the decision which is not really legally founded, we will have an issue. So I think we are all really invited to work hard on this, and we can do this. It is really in our hands as Europeans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapetanovic. Mr. Górski, anything that you'd like to add?
I think that it's we as an investor in the Polish economic zone, and we see some expectations from the offshore wind that are related to the competitiveness on one hand side, but also to the participation in the value chain, in the supply chain, and our core message is that on one hand side the offshore wind development is super high on the strategic agenda for PG, and we want to be an active participant and the major player in the technology in Poland. But in order to be able to do so, we need certain regulatory framework, namely the appropriate level of contracts for difference, But this is not because we want to make more money, but this is also because we can clearly prove that the development of the offshore wind has a long-term impact on the energy prices in Poland. And from that perspective, making that investment by the Ministries of Finance will have a major impact on the merit order, and while we will make sure that those ambitious targets are met, we can expect the energy prices to get lower, and we may expect the respective industries to be more competitive, not only in Europe but also outside of Europe. And the second topic that is very much related to the competitiveness and to the impact of the development of offshore wind is the so-called local content. And here we are very much in the position to support the development of the local participants of the offshore wind industry, but we are also conveying the message that this is a long-term game. This is not something that is happening overnight. From that perspective, the sustainable development of offshore projects in any country, but speaking about the Baltic Sea in our respective countries, will have a very positive impact on local business, and I strongly believe that this will enable the not only Polish but also Lithuanian, Scandinavian and German companies are already there, but this will definitely have a very positive impact on those companies, local companies, to be able to participate in the whole supply chain across the life cycle of those projects, which is a 30 years horizon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Mr. Górski, and Ms. Ambassador Kasputiania.
Just a few remarks. I think we are very encouraged that both in Commission President von der Leyen political guidelines for presented to the Parliament, and both in Draghi report we see that the energy and availability and affordability of sustainable energy, it's very, very high on the agenda. So we believe that both in regulatory framework, but also in looking for financial resources, for incentive for investment, also for the private sector in this development. We believe that we will have more proposals and actions and progress in this field. So we are encouraging this, and I also want to echo what just was said before me, that it's also important that the local communities feel the beneficial effect of the development of new projects, and people from the local supply chain can benefit from new jobs and other economic opportunities that would bring the broader public support for the development of renewables.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ambassador. And with that, I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. We have just about 20 minutes left of discussion, which means I will need to be razor sharp, strict. So I got a couple of questions from Slido, but I will also like to get questions from the floor here at the Polish Permanent Representation. So anyone who wants to kick us off. We have a lot of you, and we have a very interesting topic, so I'm sure someone will break the ice, and we have some interesting questions. All right, we have Marcus over here.
Hi, Marcus Fischer. I'm from Ørsted, the company mentioned, also offshore wind developer. Thank you very much for this insightful discussion. The Draghi report and also the letter report that came a bit earlier mentioned the energy union and further integration of the energy market, which should of course be a key priority. And at the same time, we heard now that with renewable energy auctions, non-price criteria will play an increasing role, and also local content was mentioned. Now, my question is, if we are in a market with 27 different, or for offshore wind it's not 27, but many different tender frameworks, auction frameworks, perhaps some also interpreting local content differently, how can we ensure harmonization across these? And most importantly, how can we ensure that European players from one member state can still easily access the integrated market in another state, even though there are non-price criteria that might benefit some more local players?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Markus. So, who would like to respond?
I think that this is a very difficult question. I mean, I'm not a politician, but even if I were, it would be very difficult to answer that question probably during today's meeting. What I think needs to be taken into consideration when speaking about the local content are two dimensions. On one hand side, this should be the dimension of time. And this is our role, the role of the investors and the developers to explain and make sure that this is broadly understood, that the offshore business it's not just a 3 years project. This is not about only development. This is not only about construction, but this is about the whole life cycle of the project. And this is of great importance if you think about making an investment into an industry that supports offshore wind. That you need to take this long-term perspective, because we as investors, we as developers, we take this long-term perspective as well. So if if the local content is not being generated in the first 3 years of the development, or this is being developed, but the value of that collaboration is not significant, this means that it will be coming. So both the construction phase, where the significant amounts of money are being spent on each level of the contracting, there is also the operations phase that is kind of lasting for a long time. And the second dimension that needs to be taken into consideration when speaking about the local content, not only for the local communities, not only for the respective countries, but across the European Union, this is the scale of the project. So when we take our ambition to build 93 gigawatts of installed capacity, this is a very big number, yes. And when we translate that onto capex, and when we translate that into opex throughout the life cycle, then we end up with really significant spendings that we as investors will be making, and this is more than welcomed to make sure that this money is being spent within the local economies, within the economy of the European Union, then that we generate not only the direct results, not only indirect results, but also we observe the induced results of the development of our industry.
Thank you, Mr. Górski. I could allow for one additional short answer. Or, yes.
On local content, Łukasz Kalinski talked about the secondary legislation of the Net Zero Industry Act earlier. Sounds very complex, but it's very important, because this is where the EU is going to define the so-called supply chain resilience criterion that member states will apply in their wind energy auctions. And the key thing here is that whatever Łukasz and his colleagues in the Commission propose, it must be one single uniform model which can only be applied in one way by all 27 member states.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to move to a question that we got from the online audience. Donald, I don't know which one of them, is asking, how to say. So the question is, we perceive Russia and China as a source of risk, but who are the EU's most important partners and friends in the offshore wind technology supply chain?
Number one is the UK. You might think I would say that, wouldn't I? But this is very important. The UK is developing an offshore wind supply chain. There's another crucial angle to this, which is that the EU and the UK between them have still not sorted out the post-Brexit electricity trading arrangements. It's about the only part of the Brexit agreement that hasn't yet been settled. They did agree something, and they sent the TSOs away to try and work out the detail, and the TSOs have come back and said, it doesn't work. It was something very complex called multi-regional low-volume coupling, MRLVC, and it won't work, especially not for offshore wind in the North Sea, which is meant to be operating as an offshore bidding zone. So we've got to resolve this, and we have a new window of opportunity now with a new commission, goodwill to the UK, and of course with the new UK government. And this has to be resolved before the EU can start collaborating with the UK on anything else to do with offshore wind supply chain, grid investments or anything else. It's a matter of absolute top priority for the new College of Commissioners.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in? Otherwise, I could maybe get 2 questions maybe from the floor. Anyone who wants to take the floor? Have one there in the middle. I cannot see you, but yeah.
Hello, Halina Agielska from Council of European Energy Regulators. Thank you very much for the speeches. You've been speaking about the supply chain, but I wanted to ask, do you envision, maybe the Miss Ambassador or maybe also in Poland, do you envision opening the ownership of the offshore wind farms to the energy communities or the energy cooperatives as it was done in Belgium, for example? Do you envision such a solution as well?
Well, I'm not sure I'm in a position to fully answer this question, but as far as I understand, we have a quite developed system of energy communities with regard to the solar. Solar energy, where with the support of the budget, the municipalities or even some operators like service providers can organize energy community and install solar systems to participate as producers in this regard. As regard to the wind. Offshore wind, as I understand that this is such a big project that are still in, still being developed. They are not there yet. So I do not believe there is a big room. But who knows when we proceed with this process, what opportunities would be open. So I cannot answer definitely on this.
You'd like to add, or?
We haven't thought about it. What I think it is important that there are certain communities that will very broadly benefit from the development of offshore wind, but not necessarily as investors, but as partners in these kind of long-term life cycle operations and maintenance. I mean, this is namely related to the smaller coastal municipalities, and that's what we observe in Poland. And we as PGE, together with Ørsted, we have selected the little city of Ustka, where we are spending significant amounts of money in order to invest into very old infrastructure that was used as a kind of fishing harbor in the old good days today, this is being transformed into super modern logistics and operations and maintenance base that will benefit from the collaboration with us as owners of the assets throughout the at least next 30 years. So I'm not sure if we will be able to develop such an instrument as the possibilities that will enable the possibility to be an investor, but definitely we are very much open to those neighborhooding communities when it comes to the collaboration, and we put the social responsibility very high on our agenda when it comes to maintenance of our projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Górski. I could take one final question from the floor. Is there anyone else? Otherwise, okay, I have then a couple more questions from Slido that I wanted to then otherwise bring up. The first one is on non-price criteria, which we've been discussing, and the person asking says that so Wind Europe is strongly advocating for the application of non-price criteria to offshore projects. How could it affect the cost of the investments in the Baltic Sea? I don't know if that's a question for you, Giles, or others would want to have a say on that. So how would non-price criteria affect then the cost of investments? Any thoughts on that?
I think that there is a lot of analysis to be done, and the results may be counterintuitive because on one hand side we may see the non-price elements to not support the economics of the project at the first glance, but in the long term we may see certain indirect and induced results for the economies of respective countries that will benefit from that mechanism. But I think that this is a bit too early to make a firm statement or a firm view on that. But definitely we as representative of the industry, of the investors, we will be open to have an open dialogue in that regards, and we clearly see that this may be an important aspect of the development of our industry.
Thank you very much. And then I would like to, because we only have 5 minutes left, so I would like to wrap up with a final question to each one of you, which also comes from Slido. I mean, we have a new legislative term coming up. The new College of Commissioners is going to be unveiled very soon. So the question is, what is your wish list for the new European Commission? Would the implementation of already agreed files and action plans be sufficient? So we can have a final round of reactions. Maybe we can start with you, Giles Dixon.
Implementation of everything that has been agreed but not yet been implemented, and the enforcement, and not just the implementation of all of that legislation. If that was done to 100% in 5 years' time, then chapeau to the new European Commission, because that would be a brilliant achievement.
Implementation and enforcement, then. Madam Ambassador, any particular wishes to the new European Commission?
It is a general wish. I fully agree that in the last legislative cycle, we produced a lot of legislation that needs to be implemented, and we also need to see the results and maybe make an adjustment as we go. But also, I fully agree with this trend that we have now, that we have to care about the competitiveness of the EU globally, and industrial strategy, single market strategy, and energy strategy are part of this puzzle. Of course, this is a great balancing act, how to care for different fields and not to ruin others, because everything is so connected in our economies. But I think that the collective wisdom of institutions and member states and experts and partners and operators will let us bring Europe forward.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sputenia. Mr. Kurski?
I know that this conference is about offshore wind, but I would say that think about offshore wind in the broader context. That would be my polite request, and be supportive to the local to the state members, especially to those where we can still see some of the investors being involved in traditional generation of electricity, like for example PGE, who in order to be able to invest into the offshore wind may need to take certain steps in order to stop being involved in the conventional generation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kurski. And last but not least, Mr. Kapetanovic, your wish list to the new European
Only
Commission.
one wish. As you said, have a view on offshore wind from a holistic perspective. And this means a very specific wish. I'd like the new Commission to be as supportive and as active in European grid plan as the previous one was. Mm-hmm. The commissioner coming from your countries, you wouldn't believe it, I've never seen this in my long career. Mrs. Kadri Simpson participated in a number of our workshops from the very beginning to an end with whole her management. There were really so much behind it. It was extremely important support, and I hope the new Commission will understand that there is no, like Bill Gates said, there is no, what was he saying, without transmission. No, it's same for the offshore wind. No transition without transmission. So I hope that the new Commission will continue this very positive trend and give us a boost in that direction. European Grid Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapetanovic, and thank you very much to all of you for such a great discussion. Can I ask for a big round of applause to our panelists? So this concludes the panel discussion, a really interesting discussion on the developments, on the potential, on the challenges, on the opportunities of offshore wind in the Baltic Sea. We've addressed some of these challenges. We've provided some ideas and some suggestions and some wish list also for the next European Commission to make sure that we unleash this potential. Now, as you know, for those of you joining us here in the room, we're going to have our networking reception here, very kindly hosted by the Polish permanent representation, to which we are very grateful for having hosted us in the premises today. This event has been organized with PGE, with Euractiv as media partner, so thank you very much to PGE also for having convened us together in this discussion. And see you at the next Euractiv debates. Thank you very much to all of you for having joined.
Thank you.